My name is Vesper Hale, 30 years old. The first lie I told myself was that love makes you safe. The second was that Rowan was the reason my tiny loft felt like a future instead of four walls and a rent payment. He arrived in my life the way tide reaches a shoreline, every day a little closer, until his toothbrush leaned casually against mine and his shirts claimed a neat third of my closet like it had always been theirs. I told friends it was romantic, how he called my independence beautiful and kissed my temple while I worked late on deadlines, how he said, "You don't need me, and that's why I want to choose you." I treasured those words, not realizing they would curdle in my mouth when I repeated them back to myself in the dark. The loft was my pride. Exposed brick, high windows that swallowed light at sunrise, a scarred drafting table I'd dragged up 3 flights of steps by myself after saving through college and coffee shop shifts. Nothing in that space was a gift. Everything was paid for with insomnia and stubbornness. The lease was under my name alone because Rowan, sweet, storm-eyed Rowan, had temporary credit complications he assured me were already fixed in principle, just not on paper. I didn't mind, I said. Partners carry each other through rough patches. I had never learned how to differentiate patience from denial. There were signs, soft and silvery as spider threads. The phone he checked under the table at dinner. The texts he composed quickly and then turned face down, as if a screen could be embarrassed. The hours he disappeared and returned with explanations that had the gloss of plastic. Work emergencies, family obligations, a late gym session that left no sweat on his collar. Sometimes a woman would pass us in a lobby or at a bar, recognition flickering in her eyes like a match. She'd smile politely and veer away while I pretended not to notice the small, cold wind that blew through my chest. Still, fairy lights and hope can make a stage out of a room. The night everything cracked began with candles and promises. We had reservations at Geppe's, the Italian place with the tablecloth so white it felt like snow, and a host who always remembered our names. Rumor had been kind to me for weeks. He was going to propose. Jessica, my best friend, had said his friends were whispering about a ring. I bought the dress anyway, emerald and liquid, the color of luck. I curled my hair, painted my mouth, practiced a smile that could carry both surprise and certainty. In the mirror, I looked like someone at the door of the next chapter. Our friends gathered by 8, his coworkers in jackets that smelled faintly of cologne and ambition, my girls in soft laughter and burgundy lipstick. Rowan worked the room with easy charm, hugging shoulders, telling stories where he was always almost the hero. But his laugh landed half a beat late, and his eyes kept sliding toward his phone. I pressed my palm to the stem of my champagne flute to stop the trembling. "How was Miami?" Jessica asked, swirling her wine with a face that looked innocent if you didn't know her. Vesper said it was all meetings. "Fine," he said, chin tight. "Boring. Nothing to tell." I saw the beach in my mind, the one from his photo where the corner of a second towel had crept into the frame, quickly cropped out later. I had explained it away at the time. Colleagues get drinks. People share towels. The kitchen door banged, a burst of steam and garlic, and Parker, one of Rowan's friends, lifted his glass. "Vegas countdown, man," he called, grinning big. "The boys are locked in." It took me a second to understand he meant Rowan. "Vegas?" I said, aiming for lightness and landing somewhere nearer brittle. "When are you going?" "It's just a guy's weekend," Rowan replied, smile too quick. "No big deal." "I thought we were visiting venues," I said quietly, because 2 days earlier we'd looked at a list of gardens and warehouses that could be made into something beautiful with string lights and flowers. "We said," he never raised his voice. He didn't have to. He let the sentence cut itself. "Stop acting like we're married, Vesper. You don't decide where I go or who I'm with." The restaurant seemed to blink. Forks hesitated. Someone at another table laughed loudly, and the sound skittered across our silence like a coin on marble. Parker chuckled first, unsure. Then Derek joined, eager to show he could be comfortable with discomfort. Laughter spread, a thin, metallic sound that made my face feel not like a face, but a mask I'd forgotten how to take off. I smiled. Of course I did. I was talented at that, at being gracious, while something inside me sank like a stone in deep water. The rest of the courses arrived as if the room hadn't tilted. I tasted basil and nothing. I reached for bread and found my hand on the tablecloth instead. He reached for the check and patted his pockets theatrically. "Babe, can you grab it? Left my card at home." He'd said those words before like a joke. I paid the bill, like I had paid rent and utilities and subscription renewals, and the invisible tax women pay for loving men who call themselves between opportunities. The receipt was warm against my palm. We walked home through October air so clear it made my teeth ache. Leaves scissored under our shoes. Street lamps threw our shadows long and strange. He tried to thread his fingers through mine. I let him because rage needs a quiet room to grow. "You're being dramatic," he said at the stairs, not unkind, which somehow made it worse. Everybody laughed. You know how the guys are. "Everyone laughed," I echoed, because I needed to hear the shape of it. "Vegas is nothing. You know I love you." I unlocked the door and stepped into a home that had suddenly rearranged itself in my vision. The couch we picked together. The plant he always forgot to water. The bills in a neat stack with my name alone on every line. He loosened his tie. Expectation in his posture, the way a song expects its chorus. "Don't be like this," he murmured, reaching for me. "We're good." I let him kiss me. The practiced thing we did that once felt like language and now tasted like static. Later, he slept with his arm draped heavy over my waist, as if I was an anchor. I stared at the ceiling until the city dimmed and then brightened again, and somewhere in that slow turning, the temperature inside me changed. Heartbreak cooled to clarity. Clarity sharpened to something harder, a thin, bright wire I could wind around my fingers without bleeding. I began, very calmly, to inventory my life. I could hear my father's voice in my memory, the one that always seemed to arrive when I needed the question more than the answer. "What do you control? Start there." I controlled the lease, I controlled the keys, I controlled the way I smiled and when I chose not to. At dawn, I slipped from bed and stood by the window, wrapped in a blanket. The city had not noticed my humiliation. Trucks growled, joggers passed. The bakery at the corner began its daily miracle of turning flour and hope into bread. On the glass, I wrote a single word in fog with my fingertip and watched it vanish as the sun found the room. I did not rewrite it. I didn't need to. The word had already moved inside me. He came out of the shower humming, a towel slung low at his hips, water beading at the ends of his hair. "Morning, beautiful," he said, as if last night were a dream we could pinch awake. "Sleep well?" "Like a stone," I lied, and it was almost true. He dressed in my room, used my soap, took the good umbrella I had bought after the last storm. While he buttoned his shirt, he said, "Investors early. I'll be late. Don't wait up." I watched his mouth shape a day that did not exist. I filed away the cadence of it, not the words, the comfort with which he spoke them. I had always admired how easily he moved through rooms. Suddenly I understood that ease came at a cost I had always paid. When the door closed, the apartment exhaled. The quiet was so complete I could hear the hummingbird flick of the fridge. I made coffee with careful hands. I placed my laptop on the table and opened it to the page where the small, necessary truths of my life lived. Spreadsheets and bills and passwords. Love can make you do things you wouldn't admit you know how to do. I wasn't proud of what I knew. I was no longer ashamed of it either. Before the day ended, I would feed the wire of clarity with more facts than feelings. Before the week ended, I would discover just how many stories one man could tell at the same time. But in that morning's thin light, all I did was stand in my own kitchen and choose myself with a steadiness that felt like stepping onto solid ground after months on a boat. I didn't have a plan yet. I had something better, leverage, patience, and a memory that does not drop what hurts. Across the room, the emerald dress hung from the closet door like a warning. I left it where it was, a green lighthouse keeping me from rocks I might otherwise drift toward. The next time I wore that color, it would be on a night I named for myself. He texted from the elevator, "Heart, lightning bolt, heart." I answered with a sun emoji, and the brightness of it made me smile for reasons he would never predict. Rowan believed I was a predictable story. He had no idea I was about to revise the ending. When the door slammed behind Rowan that morning, I sat perfectly still, as if moving too quickly would scatter the thoughts coiled inside me. His humming still lingered in the air like smoke after a match, cheerful and careless, and I wondered how many times I had mistaken his detachment for charm. My coffee cooled untouched on the table while my laptop screen glowed, waiting. I had no plan, Not really. Just a gnawing instinct that I could no longer afford to dismiss. The dinner at Jepe's replayed in loops, every detail sharper than reality. Parker's laugh echoing, Jessica's uneasy glance, the metallic clink of cutlery when Rowan's words cut through the air. Stop acting like we're married, Vesper. It was the first time he had said it out loud, but in truth, he had been acting on it for months. I was the only one who hadn't admitted it. I opened the first file, the online billing portal for our shared phone plan. He had never been cautious, assuming my loyalty was a locked door. Passwords were recycled, easy. Dates, nicknames, predictable strings. Within minutes, the call logs opened before me, a litany of names and numbers like fingerprints on glass. At first, I stared at the sheer volume of late-night texts, midnight calls, numbers marked unknown, yet recurring with obsessive frequency. My throat went dry. I traced one number backward through a reverse lookup service, my cursor shaking only slightly. A name appeared, Sophia Delacroix. I copied it, pasted it into a search bar, and was met with a flood of glossy photographs, sunlight, real estate listings, and a face as radiant as polished amber. Her captions stung with irony. Trust is the currency of love. Loyalty is rare. Cherish it when you find it. And there, tucked into reflections and shadows, I began to see him. Rowan's profile in the curve of sunglasses, the edge of his jacket beside hers at a dinner table, the unmistakable tattoo on his wrist half hidden by her hair in a beach photo. I pressed my palm to my sternum. My heart beat too fast, as if it wanted to break through and escape. I told myself to breathe, told myself to look away, but my hand moved on its own, typing more numbers, following more trails. Another name? Amanda Strauss, attorney. Her feed was filled with conference panels, courtroom snapshots, sleek blazers, and expensive dinners. One photo made bile rise in my throat. The same rooftop bar Rowan had taken me to for my birthday, only 2 weeks earlier. He had called it our spot. Amanda's caption, "Nothing like a view and good company after a long week." I scrolled until my eyes blurred. A third woman emerged, Rebecca Foster, lifestyle blogger. Her posts were softer, lined with poetry and wellness tips, but every caption radiated the same illusion. Finally found someone who sees me. Honest love is worth waiting for. The pattern was grotesque in its elegance. Rowan was a mirror, bending his shape to fit each woman's hunger. For Sophia, he was an entrepreneur building an empire. For Amanda, he was a partner with connections and ambition. For Rebecca, he was spiritual, weary of superficiality, seeking authenticity. With me, he had been the man who admired my independence but secretly leached from it, turning my strength into his alibi. I should have cried. Instead, I laughed, low, bitter, dangerous. The sound startled me. It didn't belong to the woman who had once traced Rowan's jawline while he slept, who had saved every silly note he left on the fridge. It belonged to someone harder, someone I didn't yet recognize but wanted to meet. My cursor drifted back to the tabs I'd left open. This time, I followed a different breadcrumb, the iPad I'd bought him for Christmas, synced carelessly with his accounts. The group chat was still there, flashing notifications like warning beacons. Rowan, Miami was insane. Sophia thinks we're exclusive now. Tyler, and the artist girl? Still your home base? Rowan, for now. Free rent, and she's always working. Best setup I've ever had. Derek, what about the lawyer? Thought you were serious about her. Rowan, different girls for different needs. Amanda's good for dinners and connections. Tyler, you're playing with fire. Rowan, they're all desperate to believe in love. Too easy. I read the thread 3 times before the words blurred, then snapped back into clarity, cutting deeper each time. Free rent. Different girls for different needs. Too easy. That was me. Not a partner. Not even a person. Just a setup. The rage that bloomed in me then was different from the humiliation at Jepe's. This wasn't a wound. It was ignition. A slow, clean fire that illuminated every corner of my memory, every unexplained trip, every forgotten card, every time he had slipped out of my reach with a smile. He had been laughing all along, laughing with his friends, with his other women, with the version of himself he crafted for each stage. And what had I been doing? Smiling, paying, waiting, explaining away red flags as if they were quirks I could live with. Not anymore. I closed the iPad and placed it carefully on the table, as though it were a relic I might need later. My fingers tapped rhythmically against the wood, keeping time with the words echoing in my skull: leverage, patience, clarity. Rowan was still in Vegas, days away from returning. That meant I had time, not much, but enough. Enough to sharpen the truth into something he couldn't ignore, something that would leave him standing exactly where he had left me, exposed, discarded, humiliated. But revenge wasn't the whole picture. I could feel something else beneath the fury, heavier and more dangerous. A need not only to end what he had done to me, but to ensure he could never do it again, to me or to anyone. I lifted my phone and opened my notes app. My thumb hovered before typing 3 names: Sophia, Amanda, Rebecca. Below them, another, Emma, Tyler's girlfriend, who had laughed uncomfortably at Yepes but said nothing. Did she know what he encouraged? Did she know the part he played in propping up Rowan's cruelty? The names glowed on my screen, fragile yet undeniable. I stared at them, felt their weight, and whispered to the empty loft, "You deserve better. We all do." My voice trembled, but it didn't break. That night, Rowan called from Vegas, his voice loud with bar noise and forced affection. "Miss you, babe. Don't wait up." I smiled at the phone, the mask still intact. "Of course. Have fun." But after the line went dead, I opened the blinds wide and let the city lights pour into my loft. I pinned the word plan across the top of my notes, then began typing. Sleep became a stranger in the days that followed. I drifted through hours like a ghost, half in this world, half in the new one forming inside my mind. Rowan's absence should have been a relief. No lies to decode, no charm to resist, but it only amplified the silence. Silence has a way of forcing truth into the open. I made lists. Each woman had her own column: Sophia, Amanda, Rebecca. Beside their names, I scribbled what I knew, what I suspected, and what I could prove. The columns grew quickly, evidence piling like bricks, each one heavier than the last. Sophia's Instagram stories from Miami matched Rowan's business trip. Amanda's conference schedule overlapped his supposed investor meetings. Rebecca's retreat photos filled the weekends he claimed to be visiting his brother. Patterns emerged. Rowan wasn't just reckless. He was strategic. He tailored himself to their vulnerabilities. Sophia valued integrity. He played the ambitious entrepreneur craving a trustworthy partner. Amanda thrived on control and prestige. He played the man with connections, a partner who could help her climb higher. Rebecca longed for authenticity. He played the weary soul, disillusioned with shallow love, desperate for something real. And me? I was the independent woman who needed no one. He'd called my strength beautiful, then used it as cover while he drained it dry. The cruel genius of it made my hands shake, not because I admired him, but because I realized how practiced he was. How many others had there been before us? How many would there be after? I opened the iPad again, my pulse racing. The group chat hadn't gone silent. New messages rolled in, arrogant and casual. Rowan: Vegas is lit. Sophia thinks I'm working late all weekend, LOL. Tyler: Don't get sloppy, man. You've got too many balls in the air. Rowan: Relax. They all buy it. Desperate girls just want to believe. Derek: Free rent and 3 girlfriends? Living the dream. Rowan: Not a dream, boys. A system. Different girls for different needs. Too easy. Too easy. He said it like a mantra, like it excused everything. My stomach turned, but a strange calm settled over me. Their arrogance was their weakness. They left a trail. Screenshots were a weapon no charm could deflect. I saved every line, every emoji, every timestamp. My desktop filled with files, neat folders labeled by name, by date, by theme. Fraud, infidelity, group chat, receipts. Still, I couldn't stop the small, traitorous voice in my head whispering, "What if you're wrong? What if he really loves you in his own broken way?" That voice grew loudest at night. I would lie in the bed he'd warmed, staring at the ceiling, remembering moments that felt real, the way he had kissed my wrist the morning of my first big client pitch, the time he'd danced barefoot with me in the kitchen to music from a neighbor's window. Were those lies too? Or did they belong to the part of him I had fallen for, the part smothered by his greed? The thought almost undid me, but then my phone buzzed with a notification. Another photo from Sophia. A dinner, 2 wine glasses, a shadow across the table that looked too familiar. The caption, "To new beginnings." I laughed out loud, sharp and humorless. Whatever tenderness had lingered shriveled in that moment. If love had ever lived between us, Rowan had strangled it himself. By the 4th night, my lists had grown into plans. The more I looked, the more I saw the fault lines he'd ignored. The lease was mine alone. The utilities were mine. The internet, the parking spot, even the couch he sprawled on like a throne, mine. Legally, Rowan was no more than an overstayed guest, a parasite. That realization filled me with a kind of power I hadn't felt in years. He thought he had built a system, but he had forgotten one crucial detail. The foundation beneath his lies was mine. I could pull it out from under him whenever I chose. But vengeance without precision was useless. I didn't want a shouting match or a dramatic breakup scene. That would only feed his ego, give him the story of the crazy ex. No, I wanted silence first. Calculation. A cut so clean he wouldn't even realize he was bleeding until he collapsed. I remembered something my mother once told me when I was a child, after catching me plotting revenge on a schoolmate who'd stolen my pencil case. If you want justice, Vesper, let the truth do the work. Lies rot on their own. You just have to lift the lid. The truth was already in my hands. I just needed the right moment to open it. At dawn, I stood before my window again, watching the city stretch itself awake. My reflection stared back at me, eyes darker than I remembered, jaw set with quiet resolve. "This isn't heartbreak anymore," I whispered. "This is preparation." I picked up my phone and drafted the first message, not to Rowan, but to myself. A reminder saved as a note, a headline only I would see. 2 weeks until Vegas. 2 weeks until the perfect stage. I looked around the loft, at the life I had built with such devotion. Each object shimmered with double meaning now. The couch wasn't just a couch, it was evidence of his freeloading. The table wasn't just a table, it was where I'd find proof, where I'd plan his unraveling. Even the plants seemed to lean toward me as if in solidarity, survivors of his neglect. Rowan thought he could live off me without consequence. He thought women were interchangeable, needs to be filled, placeholders until better came along. He was wrong. I had 2 weeks to prove it. 2 weeks to turn his system into his undoing. And when he came home from Vegas, he would find not the loyal partner he expected, but a silence sharper than any scream. The next morning, I woke with a clarity I hadn't felt in years. Rowan's side of the bed was already cold, the sheets crumpled, as if, even in sleep, he couldn't hold still. His absence gave me room to breathe, room to plan. I sat at the kitchen table, the same one where he'd sprawled with late-night stories of investors and deals, my laptop open before me. For years, I had used this table to sketch designs, draft proposals, send invoices that paid for every lamp, rug, and plate in this loft. Now, it became the battlefield where I would assemble my weapons, screenshots, receipts, documents, every scrap of truth he had dismissed as invisible. I created folders as precise as a courtroom case file. Lease, sole holder, Vesper Hale. Utilities, paid by me. Receipts, Rowan's use. Then came the evidence of his betrayals, screenshots of his group chat, side-by-side comparisons of his business trips with the women's social media posts, bank statements showing dinners and gifts charged to the emergency card I'd once naively added him to. Each file steadied me. Each click of save as was a heartbeat of control. Rowan had always underestimated me. He'd mistaken my patience for passivity, my silence for weakness. That night at Jeppe's, he believed I would smile through humiliation forever. He had no idea he'd created something far more dangerous than an angry girlfriend. He had created a woman who had stopped believing his lies. By noon, I was ready for the next step, leverage. I walked to the leasing office on the corner, my hands shaking only slightly as I greeted Mrs. Rodriguez, the building manager. She was a sharp-eyed woman in her 50s, the type who noticed everything but rarely commented. "I'd like to give notice," I said, forcing my voice calm. Her eyebrows rose. "You've been a wonderful tenant, Ms. Hale. May I ask why?" "I need a change," I lied smoothly. "End of the month." She flipped through her files, then nodded. "Of course. Your name is the only one on the lease, so the deposit will come directly to you. Do you need help arranging movers?" "No," I said quickly. "I'll handle that myself." The words tasted like victory. Rowan's name wasn't anywhere in her records. To the building, he didn't exist. In the eyes of the law, he was a ghost squatting in my shadow. The relief was so sharp it felt like laughter pressing against my ribs. As I walked back upstairs, I rehearsed my mask. Rowan couldn't know. Not yet. If he sensed anything, he might tighten his grip or twist the story. He was too practiced at manipulation, too good at making women question their own reflection. I needed to stay quiet, careful, invisible until the moment of impact. That evening, when Rowan strolled in whistling, his tie loose, I greeted him with a smile. "How was work?" I asked, as if I hadn't read every false note in his calendar. "Long," he sighed, dropping his jacket on a chair I'd bought. "The investors are circling, though. Big things coming." I nodded, even leaned forward to kiss his cheek. Inside, I memorized every careless detail. The way he assumed my belief. The way he let me carry the weight of his comfort without thanks. These details would matter later, when the truth stripped him bare. That night, as he fell asleep, I lay awake listening to his breathing. My eyes traced the ceiling, but my mind traced the outlines of the plan. Move my essentials in stages. Keep evidence ready. Let him walk into his own undoing blind. The following days blurred into a rhythm of preparation. During his late nights at work, I boxed up winter clothes and hid them in the basement storage. I began wrapping my books in newspaper, stacking them neatly in corners he never noticed. Every time I sealed a box, I whispered the same word, mine. Still, there were moments when doubt clawed at me. Once, while packing the kitchen, I found a note he'd written me months earlier. "Love you, always, R." The ink was smudged where my thumb had lingered, keeping it safe in a drawer. For a second, grief cracked through the steel inside me. What if I was making a mistake? What if, beneath his cruelty, he still loved me in some broken way? But then I remembered his voice at Jepe's, the laughter of his friends, the sting of being dismissed as if my devotion was suffocating. I pictured Sophia's trusting smile, Amanda's fierce ambition, Rebecca's soft hope, all being twisted by the same man. My grief hardened again into resolve. Rowan wasn't a man who had made mistakes. He was a man who had made choices. And now, I would make mine. One night, as he loosened his tie and kicked off his shoes, he glanced at the boxes in the corner. "What's with all the packing?" he asked casually. "Spring cleaning," I said smoothly, sliding a stack of files over the top to conceal their labels. "Just clearing space." He shrugged, satisfied. He never questioned me too much. He thought he had me too well trained. But I watched his reflection in the window as he poured himself a drink, and for the first time, I didn't see the man I loved. I saw a stranger borrowing my life. Later, when he slept, I opened my notes again and typed a single sentence beneath the names of the other women. "The truth is the blade. Silence is the sheath." I closed the laptop, my heartbeat steady. 2 weeks until Vegas. 2 weeks until silence became the loudest sound Rowan would ever hear. 2 weeks. That was the window. A span of 14 days where every movement, every breath I took, had to be deliberate. Revenge wasn't a single strike. It was a performance. And timing was everything. Rowan strutted through those days as if nothing had changed. He left cologne-heavy hugs on my shoulders, dropped his socks across the living room floor, kissed me quickly before darting out with excuses about meetings. If he noticed that the bookshelves were thinning, that boxes slowly disappeared from the corners, he didn't say. Perhaps he assumed I was reorganizing, or maybe he was too absorbed in his other lives to notice his home shifting around him. I moved like a thief in my own apartment. One evening while he drank with his friends, I carried winter coats down to the basement storage unit. Another night, I packed half the kitchen into neat cardboard cubes, labeling them only in symbols I would recognize. By the end of the week, nearly a third of my belongings were gone, and Rowan remained oblivious, humming while tying his shoes, tossing his jacket onto a chair I had already earmarked as something he'd never sit in again. I signed the lease for a new loft across town under my maiden name. Smaller, but modern and bright, a place no memory of him could follow me into. The realtor had smiled when I signed. "Fresh start?" she asked, and I had answered with a nod that felt like a vow. But my plan wasn't only about leaving, it was about exposing. Rowan had his stage at Jepe's when he cut me down with a single line. Now I would give him a stage of his own making. His women, his friends, his network of lies. I sat late into the night drafting emails. Each one carried the same calm tone, as though from a concerned friend. I thought you deserved to know the truth about the man you're seeing. His name is Rowan Enzo, and he has been dating multiple women at the same time. Attached are screenshots, receipts, and proof. Please don't think this comes from malice. It comes from one woman to another, from someone who knows how easily hope can be twisted into humiliation. For Sophia, I attached the Miami photos. For Amanda, I included receipts from the dinners he'd charged to my card, dinners she thought he'd paid for himself. For Rebecca, I sent the screenshots from the group chat, the ones where Rowan mocked women who believed in authenticity. Each email was scheduled, carefully timed, to land in their inboxes just as his Vegas trip ended. And then there was Emma, sweet Emma, Tyler's girlfriend, who had sat at Jeppe's with a strained smile while everyone laughed at my expense. She had looked uncomfortable, but she hadn't spoken. I didn't blame her. I knew how silence could feel like survival. Her email was different, more personal. Emma, you don't know me well, but we share a connection, through Rowan, through Tyler. What I'm sending you is not gossip, it's truth. Screenshots of Tyler's group chat where he laughs about women being too easy, where he encourages Rowan to use us like furniture, one for rent, one for dinners, one for connection. I know this will hurt, but silence will hurt you more. Please believe me, you deserve better than complicity disguised as loyalty. I scheduled hers too. The loft began to look like a stage set, stripped of warmth. Rowan noticed once. Feels empty in here, he said, sipping the whiskey I had bought, using the glass I had polished. It's winter, I replied lightly. Maybe it's just the light. He nodded, satisfied, never suspecting he was the only object in the room that had no place in my future. As the Vegas trip neared, anticipation sharpened into something electric. Each night, I lay awake rehearsing the scene in my head, Rowan returning with sand still in his hair, laughter still clinging to his voice, fumbling with keys that no longer fit the lock, his confusion, his panic, the silence where my presence used to be. But the vision that drove me hardest wasn't his downfall. It was the thought of those women, Sophia, Amanda, Rebecca, and Emma, reading my words, finally seeing the truth stitched together. For too long, Rowan had convinced each of us we were alone in our doubts. Soon, he would have no shadows left to hide in. One evening, Jessica stopped by unexpectedly, dropping off a scarf she said she'd borrowed months ago. She glanced around the half-empty loft, her brow furrowing. "Vesper, what's going on?" she asked softly. I hesitated, then exhaled. "I'm leaving." Her eyes widened. "Finally. God, I've wanted to say it for months, but—" She caught herself. "Are you okay?" "I will be," I said, and for the first time, I believed it. She hugged me tightly, and as she left, she whispered, "Make it count." I would. On the eve of his trip, Rowan bustled around the loft with boyish excitement, tossing clothes into his suitcase. He kissed me absently between packing, his hands warm but careless. "Don't wait up for me," he said cheerfully. "Flight gets in late Sunday." "I won't," I murmured, my voice steady, my eyes calm. Inside, the countdown ticked louder. Less than 48 hours until the curtain rose. As he zipped his bag, he grinned at me. "Promise me you'll be good while I'm gone." I smiled back, hiding the storm in my chest. Always. And when the door closed behind him, I let out the breath I had been holding for months. The stage was ready. The actors were in place. All that remained was to let the truth step into the light. Friday morning dawned gray, drizzle streaking the windows like a painter with shaky hands. Rowan was giddy, bustling through the loft like a man half his age, tossing shirts and cologne bottles into his suitcase. I sat at the table with my coffee, watching him, every detail imprinting itself in my mind. The way he hummed off key, the careless arc of his tie, landing across the back of a chair, the boyish excitement that made me wonder if he'd ever truly grown past 21. "Don't wait up," he said again, zipping his bag with a grin. "Flight lands late. We'll probably grab dinner at the hotel." "Of course," I replied, sipping coffee to hide the twist of my mouth. He leaned down, kissed my forehead like I was a child, and laughed. "Love you, babe." "Love you too," I whispered, and when the door clicked shut, the silence that followed was so thick it felt like another presence in the room. I didn't move at first, just listened. The sound of his footsteps fading down the stairwell, the slam of the building's front door, the faint hum of the city resuming around me. My pulse slowed. For the first time in months, maybe years, the loft was truly mine again. I rose, deliberate, and set my mug aside. The movers were scheduled for Monday, but the weekend ahead was mine to prepare. I walked the rooms, letting my hand trail across the furniture, the counters, the bed. Each item hummed with memory. The couch where Rowan had sprawled with lies about investors. The table where I'd paid bills he never glanced at. The bed where I had learned how silence can weigh more than words. In the bedroom closet, I found a photo wedged between shirts. Our first vacation together. Sunlight, his arms around me, both of us laughing at something outside the frame. I sat on the bed staring at it, grief and fury warring inside me. For a moment, the temptation came. Burn it, rip it, destroy it. But I didn't. I slid it into a drawer and closed it. Not because it meant anything now, but because one day I might want to remember how easy it was to mistake a mask for a man. By Saturday afternoon, the loft was stripped of sentiment. Boxes lined the corners, labeled with symbols only I understood. Essentials waited neatly by the door. 2 suitcases, a laptop bag, a box of files that could collapse Rowan's illusions in an instant. The rest, the couch, the dishes, the television, would stay behind, artifacts of a life that had never been ours. That evening, I ordered takeout from Jeppe's, my final meal in the place where everything had cracked. I sat at the table alone, twirling pasta, the faint scent of garlic carrying me back to the night his voice had carved me open in front of our friends. Stop acting like we're married. I chewed slowly, swallowed, and let the memory pass through me like poison leaving the body. As night deepened, my phone buzzed. Rowan's name lit the screen. I let it ring twice before answering. "Hey, babe," his voice slurred with alcohol and excitement. I could hear music, laughter, the muffled energy of Vegas behind him. "Just wanted to check in, make sure everything's good." "Everything's perfect," I said softly. "How's Vegas?" "Good, the usual guy stuff, you know?" "I'm starting to," I murmured. There was a pause. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Nothing, sweetie, just missing you." I pitched my voice warm, steady. "When does your flight get in?" "6, don't bother picking me up, I'll Uber." "See you at home," I said. And when he echoed it back, I smiled at the lie. Because by 6 o'clock Sunday evening, there would be no home for him to return to. Sunday dawned crisp, sunlight cutting through the blinds. I rose early, heart steady. 3 o'clock. That was the moment. The emails to Sophia, Amanda, Rebecca, and Emma, each one scheduled to detonate precisely when his plane was still in the air. Proof, screenshots, receipts, truth, sharpened and timed like a blade. I spent the morning walking through the loft one last time. In the kitchen, I left behind the coffee mugs he favored. In the living room, I placed his worn sneakers neatly by the door, a quiet reminder of how much space he had once taken without permission. On the table, I set the final pieces, the lease in my name, the termination notice, the printed group chat messages with timestamps glowing in color, no explanation, just evidence. At 2:59, I opened my laptop. The clock ticked forward, and with a single click, the messages flew into the world. 4 women, 4 truths arriving like thunderclaps. Then I closed the laptop, packed it into my bag, and stood. I locked the door behind me for the last time and walked down the stairwell, 2 suitcases rolling behind me. Each step felt lighter, as though I were leaving not just a man, but a version of myself I no longer needed. The woman who explained away red flags, who paid for love with silence. By the time Rowan's plane touched down, I would be gone. By the time his keys scraped uselessly against the lock, he would be just another ghost wandering a stage he thought he owned. The storm was no longer coming. It had already begun. At exactly 6:07 p.m. on Sunday, my phone buzzed. Rowan's first voicemail landed while I was driving toward my new loft, the sun bleeding orange across the skyline behind me. I didn't listen, not yet. I wanted the moment to ripen, wanted him to marinate in confusion before I let his words fill the air. By the second light, another voicemail arrived, then a third. By the time I parked in the garage of my new building, there were 7. I carried my suitcases up the elevator, heart steady, steps deliberate. The new apartment was still bare, smelling faintly of fresh paint and possibility. I set the bags down, poured a glass of water, and finally pressed play. The first message was frantic. "Vesper, my key doesn't work. Babe, what's going on? Did the lock jam? Call me back." The second, sharper, tinged with panic. "The neighbor said you moved out. That's insane. Tell me she's wrong. This isn't funny. By the fifth, his tone had changed. Softer, wheedling. Look, whatever you think happened in Vegas, it's not what it looks like. We can fix this. Don't throw away 2 years over a misunderstanding. I laughed, the sound echoing off the bare walls. Misunderstanding. As if screenshots and receipts were illusions I had conjured from boredom. The final message of the night was raw, his voice cracked. Please, Vess, just talk to me. I love you. Don't do this. I deleted them all without saving. But the true satisfaction didn't come until the other women began to respond. At 8:15, my phone rang. Sophia. Her voice trembled with fury. He told me you were just a friend crashing at his place, said you were down on your luck, that he was helping you out. Do you know how pathetic that makes me feel? He never paid a cent of rent, I said flatly. The lease was mine alone. She cursed under her breath, then laughed bitterly. God, we're fools, all of us. At 8:47, Amanda called. Her voice was controlled, cold as steel. The financial fraud alone could bury him. He represented himself falsely on multiple fronts. If you have more evidence, I can build a case. I have everything, I told her. Every lie, every charge. Her inhale was sharp. Then we'll make sure he regrets ever thinking we were disposable. Rebecca's email arrived near midnight. Long, thoughtful, grieving. She thanked me for reaching out, for caring enough to tell strangers the truth. I ignored so many signs, she wrote. I thought love meant patience. Now I see patience became permission. But Emma's response shook me most. A text at first. Is this real? Then a call. Those screenshots, she whispered. Tyler actually said those things? Every word. Silence stretched, so long I thought the call had dropped. Then, he's supposed to come home tomorrow. He has dinner reservations. Said he wanted to celebrate surviving another boys' weekend. Her voice hardened. He doesn't know yet that I've packed my bags. I closed my eyes. I'm sorry. Don't apologize. You've given me the truth. That's more than he ever did. Her steadiness surprised me, strength wrapped in quiet fury. What will you do when Rowan comes back? She asked. I looked around my new apartment, at the suitcases and boxes waiting to be unpacked. He's going to get exactly what he deserves. Good, Emma said. He deserves worse. The next morning, my phone became a chorus of desperation. Rowan again and again, each message more unhinged than the last. At 9:02, you can't just disappear on me. That's insane. At 11:37, Vess, please, I'll change. Just tell me where you are. By 2:12, bargaining. We'll get counseling. I'll get rid of everyone else. Just don't leave me like this. By 4:15, rage. This is psychotic. You'll regret this. And then Tyler called. His voice exploded through the speaker before I could even say hello. What the hell did you send Emma? She left me. Packed her bags. Gone. Do you have any idea what you've done? Hello to you too, I said coolly. You're unhinged, Vesper. Destroying relationships over some stupid joke at dinner? I laughed, low and sharp. A joke? Screenshots don't lie, Tyler. You encouraged Rowan to treat us like furniture. You called us desperate. You said we were too easy. So tell me, who's really unhinged? Silence. Then he snapped. Those conversations were private. So was my relationship, I shot back. But you had no problem turning it into entertainment. He sputtered, furious, before slamming the call dead. I set my phone down, my hands steady. Rowan's world was collapsing piece by piece. His women knew. His friends were turning on each other. His home was gone. And still, the real reckoning hadn't even begun, because tomorrow the women would meet, and Rowan's lies would finally face their jury. Monday noon, a cafe downtown. I arrived early, deliberately choosing a table in the back where shadows stretched long and conversation could be private. My hands wrapped around a mug of coffee gone lukewarm, but I hardly tasted it. My eyes kept darting to the door, waiting. Sophia arrived first. Sleek black blazer, gold earrings, her beauty sharper now that it was tempered with fury. She slid into the seat across from me, her jaw clenched. Vesper, she said, her voice clipped. You really moved out? Yes. She gave a short laugh, bitter as burnt sugar. Smart. Minutes later, Amanda appeared, her stride brisk, her suit immaculate. She didn't waste time on pleasantries. I brought a folder, she said, tapping her bag. Financial fraud statutes, precedents. If what you sent is real, he's vulnerable. It's real, I replied. Finally, Rebecca slipped in, softer, almost fragile. Her sweater hung loose, her hair pulled back in a messy knot. Her eyes were rimmed red, but her expression was steady. I almost didn't come, she admitted, sliding into her chair. Part of me still wanted to believe him. Sophia reached across, squeezed her hand. We all did. The four of us sat in silence for a beat, letting the enormity of it settle, strangers bound by one man's web of lies. I've been reading back through our conversations, René, Sophia said, pulling out her phone. He told me he was building an empire, said I was the only woman who believed in his vision. She scrolled, showing us messages peppered with words like partnership and trust. Amanda snorted. Funny. He told me he was between ventures but had powerful connections. Said if I helped him navigate legal hurdles, we'd both be rich. Rebecca's voice trembled. He told me he was sick of shallow women, that he wanted someone spiritual, someone real. She met my eyes. What did he tell you? I let the bitterness roll slowly off my tongue, that he admired my independence, that he chose me even though I didn't need him. Amanda's laugh was sharp. He's a shapeshifter. He just tells you what you're starving to hear. Not anymore, Sophia said, her voice held steel. Now we decide what he hears. The plan began to take form at that table. Amanda outlined the legal angle: credit card fraud, false representation, unauthorized residency. With your documentation, Vesper, we can file a complaint. The DA will be interested. He's a textbook case. Sophia leaned forward. I can handle the professional side. In real estate, reputation is currency. By next week, every investor, every partner he's ever charmed will know exactly who he is. Rebecca swallowed hard, then spoke. I can write. My blog has reach. If I tell our story, not just mine, ours, it could warn other women. Make sure he can't do this again. They all turned to me. I felt the weight of their eyes, their expectations. What do you want? Sophia asked. I pictured Rowan laughing in Jeppes, my humiliation feeding his pride. I remembered the group chat, his words like knives. Too easy, free rent, different girls for different needs. I want him to lose everything, I said quietly. Not just the women, not just the money, his reputation, his confidence, his ability to ever believe he can do this again. I want him to feel as small as he made us feel. Sophia's lips curved in a cold smile. Then let's take it all. My phone buzzed on the table, the name Rowan lighting the screen. The others leaned in as I swiped to answer, setting it on speaker. Vesper! His voice cracked, desperation bleeding through. Please, we need to talk. This has gone too far. Amanda leaned back, eyes narrowing. Fraud has a way of going far. What? Who is that? Rowan demanded. Me, Amanda snapped. The lawyer you strung along while charging dinners to someone else's credit card. Silence, then stammering. Amanda, wait. Sophia cut in, her tone scathing. And me, the woman you swore was your only partner while parading others around behind my back. My clients will love hearing about this. Rebecca's voice was soft but sure. You told me you wanted something real. Turns out you don't even know what real is. His breathing grew frantic. Vesper, please, you don't understand. I love you. I made mistakes, but I love you. I felt the words roll over me like smoke, leaving nothing behind. Love is respect, Rowan. Honesty, partnership. You gave me lies and humiliation. That isn't love. That's selfishness in disguise. You can't do this to me, he spat suddenly, the mask cracking. You can't just destroy my entire life. No, I said, calm as a judge. You destroyed it yourself. We're just lifting the lid. And with that, I hung up. The four of us sat back, the air electric. For the first time since Jeppes, I felt my chest expand without pain. It wasn't just about me anymore. It was about all of us. About every woman who had been told she was asking too much when all she wanted was respect. About refusing to let a man like Rowan write the ending to our stories. The reckoning had begun, and he was finally outnumbered. 3 weeks later, Rowan's name was splashed across the business section of the local paper. Local entrepreneur charged with fraud. The article was brief but merciless. Multiple counts of credit card misuse, false representation of residency, and financial manipulation. Amanda had followed through on her word, building a case so airtight even Rowan's charm couldn't slip through the cracks. I read the article at my new kitchen table, sunlight pooling across the surface I had chosen myself. No lies lingered here, no ghosts. Just me, my coffee, and the quiet satisfaction of watching consequences unfold. The fallout came fast. Sophia's network spread the truth through professional circles like wildfire. Within a week, Rowan's name had been quietly blacklisted by investors, potential partners, even social clubs he once bragged about belonging to. In a city where reputation was everything, he had become untouchable. Rebecca's blog post went viral. The Anatomy of a Master Manipulator. She wove our stories together. 4 intelligent women deceived, not because we were weak, but because we believed in the goodness he pretended to mirror back to us. Her words struck chords across the internet, comments pouring in from women who saw their own scars in ours. It wasn't just about Rowan anymore. It was about a culture that taught women to ignore red flags, to stay quiet, to smile through humiliation. Rebecca gave them permission to stop. And then there was Emma. Her departure from Tyler detonated like a grenade in their friend group. The Vegas photos had surfaced in their shared album, grainy images of men with women who weren't their partners, hotel rooms littered with bottles, proof they had sworn didn't exist. The girlfriends and wives who once laughed nervously at boys' jokes now saw the truth unfiltered. Tyler lost Emma, Derek lost his fiancée, and the group chat that had been their secret playground collapsed overnight. Rowan, though, bore the brunt. With no home, no partner, no allies, he ended up back in his childhood bedroom at 32, relying on parents who were as weary of his excuses as we were. His credit was frozen under investigation. The car he once bragged about had been repossessed. His charm, once his greatest currency, now rang hollow in every ear. Jessica, my best friend, ran into him at a grocery store. She called me afterward, her voice thick with disbelief. Vesper, he looked ruined, pushing a cart with coupons, buying generic cereal. He tried to say hello, but I just walked away. Honestly, looking at him was punishment enough. I listened, my lips curving into something that wasn't quite a smile. It wasn't joy I felt. It was relief. The kind that comes when the monster under your bed is finally dragged into daylight and revealed to be nothing more than a pathetic man clutching excuses. But the story wasn't just his unraveling, it was our rebuilding. Amanda pushed for legislation to strengthen protections against romance fraud, using our case as a catalyst. She spoke on panels, her voice firm, commanding. Sophia launched a nonprofit offering workshops on financial literacy for women, ensuring others would never be blindsided the way we had been. Rebecca signed a book deal, her voice reaching thousands more who needed to hear that survival was possible. And me? I thrived. My design business exploded, fueled by energy, no longer siphoned by a parasite. I took on clients who respected my work, who paid invoices without excuses. My new loft became a sanctuary of light and quiet, every corner arranged by me, for me. Rowan still tried, of course. Voicemails left on blocked numbers, messages sent through mutual acquaintances. The last one I heard was almost laughable. "We can still fix this, Vess. You and me. We're meant to be. Meant to be." I let the words roll around in my head until they lost their shape. We had never been meant for anything except this ending. The irony was sharp. He once bragged to his friends that I was home base, free rent, the woman who made everything too easy. But in the end, I was the one who locked the doors, packed the boxes, and handed him nothing but silence. Rowan had called it a system. I turned it into his downfall. And the best part? I didn't do it alone. We were no longer 4 isolated women explaining away red flags. We were an alliance, a chorus, a jury that had weighed his lies and delivered judgment. And judgment had been final. 1 year later, I found myself standing outside Yepes again. The same warm light spilled through its windows, the same scent of garlic and wine floated into the street. But this time, I didn't hesitate at the door. I wasn't here to endure humiliation. I was here to reclaim the scene of my undoing. Inside, the restaurant buzzed with chatter, laughter bouncing off the walls. At a corner table, 3 familiar faces waited. Sophia in her tailored blazer, Amanda with her ever-present folder, Rebecca glowing in soft pastels. Beside them sat Emma, smiling for the first time since I'd known her, and 2 new women, both drawn into our circle after discovering their own versions of Rowan and other men. We raised our glasses, the candlelight catching in our eyes. "To consequences," Sophia said, her voice sharp with satisfaction. "To truth," Amanda added, her glass steady. "To authentic connections," Rebecca whispered, her smile fragile but real. "To never settling for less than we deserve," Emma declared, her voice ringing clear. I lifted my glass last. "To justice, and to the futures we're building for ourselves." The clink of glass rang out like a bell, sealing a promise between us. As we ate, I felt something loosen in my chest. The last time I sat in this room, I had been a ghost inside my own life, smiling while my dignity bled out under the table. Now I was alive, surrounded by women who had seen me at my lowest and helped me rise higher than I'd ever imagined. Meanwhile, Rowan had become a ghost himself. Word traveled easily in our circle. He had pled guilty to fraud, avoided prison only through a suspended sentence and community service. His credit was ruined, his reputation radioactive. He worked at a car dealership in the suburbs, trying to sell lies that no longer convinced anyone. At 33, he lived with his parents. The golden boy turned into a cautionary tale. Sometimes I wondered if he still told himself stories at night, if he believed he was the victim, if he replayed yepes in his mind and thought the laughter had been harmless. Maybe he still called it a misunderstanding. Maybe he hated me. Maybe he pitied himself. None of it mattered. His story had no weight in mine anymore, because my life was no longer about Rowan. It was about me, about the women at this table, about the strength I hadn't known I possessed until humiliation stripped me bare and forced me to rebuild. My design firm had grown beyond anything I had dreamed. I'd hired a team, rented office space, seen my work featured in magazines. My nights were no longer spent watching a man lie his way through texts. They were spent sketching, creating, living. And yes, I was dating again. Carefully, slowly. Michael was nothing like Rowan. Steady, quiet, respectful. He didn't fill rooms with charm or spin tales about empires. He paid his own bills, listened when I spoke, and never once made me feel like asking for honesty was asking for too much. For the first time, I felt what partnership should have been all along. Two people walking side by side, not one dragging the other behind. As the night wore on, we lingered over dessert, laughter rising louder than the memory of that old humiliation. Around us, other diners smiled, unaware that they were sitting near the ashes of a battlefield, now turned into fertile ground. I looked at the women around me. Sophia, who had turned her fury into advocacy. Amanda, who had reshaped law to protect others. Rebecca, whose voice had become a lifeline for countless strangers. Emma, who now planned a wedding with someone who truly deserved her. And me, Vesper Hale, no longer the woman who smiled through pain, but the one who walked away, who chose herself, who built again from rubble. Sometimes the worst betrayal is also the sharpest mirror. Rowan showed me who he really was, but more importantly, he showed me who I refused to be. As we stepped out into the night, the city lights glittered like 1,000 small promises. I inhaled, the air cool and clean, and felt the weight of the past slide fully from my shoulders. Rowan had thought he could define me, break me, erase me, but all he had done was carve space for a stronger version of myself to emerge. And that, I realized, was the sweetest revenge of all, not his ruin, but my rebirth.